Well, first question again. The Italian lady asks you too. Some people here from a public administration or a politician here in the room, or are you all true believers? Well, must be the true believers. Welcome anyway. I have a lot of introduction slides, so I go too quickly now. I want to talk with you about implementation. The Netherlands do have an ambitious plan. I took some in paper. You can download them, of course, from our site, but for the ones who really want to read it today, I have some with me. We started in 2008. I started last summer, and we were a bit operational in autumn. So we've only been in practice now for half a year. These are the subjects I'm going to talk with you about. We've heard them all before. Interoperability, talk some about the political context, and talk mainly about what we want to achieve the next few years. Of course, these are political put years. I come to that. Well, let's do some more storytelling. There's a lot of ways to tell them. You know this, of course, because you're true believers. It's about interoperability. If you take two of the same ones, amplifiers, these are, of course, they work together. But if you get a third one who's different, and we all know this story, it doesn't work anymore. So we're really having a problem then. Sighing deep, I often saw my husband with a bundle like that, and I was always glad I didn't have to do it. This is what we're talking about. Interoperability, the ability to exchange data and to share information and knowledge. Well, we've heard it before today. I'm sitting here all day. I have a very good day, I must say. Compliments to the Swiss when they're very good presentations. A lot of definitions have been made. And a growing amount of governments are having an opinion on these definitions. I wonder if the definitions are going to make the difference. I don't think so. The challenge we are facing is to work in a different way. The man from Munich told it too. And I'm going to add something. Our European bureaucracies are used to work linear, and they're used to work top-down. They make legislation if there's a problem, and then they tell their citizens what to do. Where we are arriving at now, open standards and the use of open source software, it's a different ball game. It's the ball game where you've got to work together. And it's a ball game of standardization. We heard it just a few minutes ago. Standardization not only on the technical level, because that's what lots of us, I shall say, not me, but you, it's your business. Now, the standardization on organizational and semantic levels are going to make the difference. The standardization, and not too much, I do agree completely with Munich, on working processes, they are going to make the difference. But we don't like to standardize. We do like to point out that we are just a bit different than the other one who's doing, by the way, exactly the same. So the new ball game is standardization and not too much, and to get more knowledge on how openness works. This community working, I come to that a bit later, we can't do it just by ourselves, except the young ones who are doing it all day. But these state bureaucracy can't work circular networking just by themselves. They've got to learn that. And before we can say this, we have to get a notion on these subjects. And we, as managers, ICT alike, all of the organization. tell you something about how we got there with this action plan. Just like in Italy, I don't know why it's the same time, we're already struggling with the subject for about 10 years now. And, well, things like our trading position, like you heard from Ineke, a lot of activity when you start working with free software, was one of the motivations to start in 2003 the first program, what we call OSOS, Open Standards and Open Source Software. And there have been 2 programs after another. But they didn't bring these 2 programs what everyone expected. So a member of parliament, Mr. Vendrick, lower chamber, said in 2004, we need to have all these public organizations open by 2006. I think he thought it a very linear trajectory as well, which it isn't, of course. And that's what they saw after 10 years of stimulating the subject. Still a lot of vendor lock-in, even more, I should say. I mean, the Microsofts and Oracles of this world, we heard it today, they know how to work and how to get this being tied up deeper and deeper. Organizations know a lot about these applications and a lot less about open standards and how open source software works. So on all levels, there's too little knowledge and there are too little plans. So this is a picture of the lower chamber in the Netherlands. They were quite unanimous when they decided that an action plan should be brought into work. This was the end of 2007. Netherlands want to be ahead. I always wonder in what? Of themselves, I think. That's the idea. They want to get further. I think they want to get more open. Interoperability, like lots of people today are stressing, is the key word. You want to exchange information and data. But there were some more. We had the example of Extremadura, I think, well, you all know. That's, I think, democracy in new action. The bureaucracy and the citizen together. And sustainability of information is a subject too, of course. It has been for a long time, but now that we have PDFA, everyone thinks, well, at last, perhaps we can make something of it. And the last one I always like a lot, reduction of administrative burden. That is the, well, the shit the bureaucracy produces. And when they say they want a reduction, they start making a lot of new rules, you know, to reduce it. But well, still it's a wish of our government to reduce their own cost administrative burden. The other arguments you've heard today as well. Creating a level playing field and lessening the dependence on a lot of vendors on all levels. So there it is. Here I have it for you in English. You can read it. We started the fire again. But how are we going to get it working? That's the difficult part, of course. Rule 1 is open standards is a must. The second one is use open source software when it's equally usable as closed source software. And what precisely is equally usable, nobody knows. But well, this is a wish, so we're working on it. the application of open standards. Well, we have for the government a forum standardization and a college. And somebody told before, we have a short list by now. That's the preferred list of open standards the Dutch government should use. On them are ODF and PDF in 3 varieties, GPEG, PNG, some geo standards, and one bottom-up standard nobody knows here, but it's a very good standard of for exchanging, what's the word, messages. We have a comply or explain rule. That means to say that you use the standard or you explain why you don't use it. And well, we're only just beginning, but if used by a lot of organizations, perhaps some lines can be drawn from that. Perhaps some lines regarding standards that should be there but aren't there. So I'm very curious if it's going to work. Second thing is that we are making implementation strategies with, now first ones are the ministries, the central government ministries. And we have done from the 13 or 7 already. And then after that we go on to the decentral municipalities and regions. And what you actually do is create a conversation, have a conversation together on the topic, so that afterwards we are together beginning to understand what's the subject at stake. Second thing we are doing is following procurement lines. And nobody is glad about that because the Dutch government isn't procuring very good in the European sense and not in the open sense as well. But we just started with it and it gets a lot of attention in the press, and I think it's going to be a good instrument, a good starting point for starting new conversations. Another one, not on this slide, is the reuse of open source software. The man from Munich told about it as well. One of the action points is the reuse of open source software made by the government. And well, we are putting things on the OSOR platform as well by now, but we also made a manual on when you can use it, because if it's on the OSOR platform, you just can't use it right away. You have to watch licenses, but you've got to watch practical things as well. So we made a manual for that, and we are starting discussion with suppliers by now to come up with servers around these applications, because that's the open source side that's got to professionalize. Do more on marketing and think about services you can provide. Open document format and PDF, we mentioned them together, PDFA for the sustainability, are a must as well. It's only just starting, so I really would like to come next year and tell you how it's working by then. Because I can tell you there are a lot of persons who ask me, ODF, what is it? What can you do with it? And when I tell it, they say, oh, we use .com and it's of point dot and it's okay with us. Why should we use ODF? So then I start my story, and afterwards they're still, well, not very convinced. So it's a tough subject, you know. Then this action plan has, well, about 19 action points. Read them if you like. On a basic level, it's about this comply or explain. It's about monitoring and ranking. It's about showing good practices. It's about procurement practices. And what I already mentioned, the reuse of government open source software. What we do as a program is link ourselves to major other developments. The first one is a big ICT program regarding all of the public organizations, and we just get in and look where the open standards are and mention open source applications if they are there. And the second one, and that's regarding Munich as well, and the Foreign Ministry of Germany, it's the open desk approach for the central government. They started a few years ago with an approach, well, they almost literally asked for Microsoft, so all of the press in the Netherlands fell over it, but they're making new starts now, and the idea is that the Open Desktop 0.2 will be a totally open desktop, and that will be for 150,000 desktops in the end. So if we can get that far, it will be, I think, the showcase of the century. Of course, we have Open Amsterdam. Amsterdam is a lot smaller than Munich, of course, but in Amsterdam they are doing the same as in Munich and getting ahead, and that's what I like very much. So the desktop central government and Open Amsterdam are now working together to make one architecture and one approach together. And of course, the central government has been to Munich and Open Amsterdam as well, and we are going to find one another on this subject because I think it can get very successful. Well, mentioned before, nobody knows anything about it, except for us here. But we are not the group who needs to learn it. So management and ICT alike need to know more about getting along with open standards and preferably open source software. Well, lots of different ambitions. And as we all know, management and ICT is not a good match. They don't understand each other, they don't talk each other's languages, but the managers take the decisions. And if they don't know, in this case, what open standards can do for them, they won't take the good decisions. So we've got a challenge next year to come here with the head decision maker in our organization and to tell stories they can understand. Some solutions, I take the major one, that's the second. Organizations have a life cycle as well. This is the EFQM maturity model. To work open, to standardize more, to work community-wise, you've got to have a certain level of development in your organization, otherwise you won't understand what to do. If you're still in the phase that you're just doing your job and don't want to get interfered with, and there are a lot of civil servants who work like that. I think it's in Germany, it's the same as in Holland and everywhere. If you say get more open, start working community-wise, they ask you why, how must I do that? And their leaders don't know how to manage these questions. So in this subject, it's very important to realize what an organization can do. We're looking at that. So, where are we now? Well, our goal, I mean, with WIS, the program I'm working in, and of course it's for our Secretary of State who think this is so very important. We want to have made an irreversible change by 2012. So after that, you can't go back anymore. And that's not the situation now in the Netherlands. Our strategy is the following. We want to get things going, and we do it community-wise. So we start communities on all the topics we have. The first reason is we start talking with the people who've got to do it. The second is when we stop being there, and that will be the end of 2012, they know what to do. So it has two goals. And the third is, this is the new way of working. For well, you know, the overheid is a Dutch word as well. They've got to learn to work together and not for just a project or for something, but forever, because that's the new dynamic we're in. Everybody's told it today. The internet started internet working on 3 open standards. We're using them all day, and they make a new way of living. And governments are part of that. They don't realize that, but that's the question. So we work community-wise. We show results, because you have some landmarks. And as I told you, we use other important developments already going, so we don't have it all to do by ourselves. I told you about the list. I think getting a good procedure on open standards is complex. I don't know what a good road is. I'm asking everywhere. Today I asked someone, he said, you've got to start communities. I said, yes, I know. But how do you spot white spots? On what basis? What infrastructural basis do you have in your head when you say, I see a white spot? Because open standards come alive in a context. They just hang in the air. They need that context. So, we've got to develop new languages to talk with one another on this subject. Comply or explain. Yes, it has to show if it's worth the while. I hope so. ODF, all of the government has to go along with ODF. We're checking by this time, asking, I told you. And the implementation strategies are on the roll. Reuse of open source software and our procurement isn't in this, but we are working on that too. It's nice to mention that since a week we've got a new organization of open source software suppliers, and I'm very glad about that because they make a partner now. I can ask them, what services are you going to offer? On what appliances that work together? So we can have the conversation, and I expect a lot from it. Well, the municipalities in the Netherlands, there are about more than 400, and a lot of them have less than 15,000 inhabitants. So you can know what they can handle, lesser all the time. It's an attention point. And of course they make the administration role. I think in Germany it will be the same. So what they do is critical to what all of the government can do. Yes, we have a closed standards patrol. We leave it in. I don't know if there is a journalist here right now because I get beheaded if I say something about it. Politics invented this. I don't know exactly what they mean, but I have to make something beautiful out of it. It's the idea that if you start to use open standards, there must come a point that you can complain about still using closed ones. Well, I'm paining my head about thinking something up that, will do. Perhaps you have an idea. I'm open to any idea on this subject. The sector education mentioned before by Munich and others as well is critical in achieving more openness in the future. We have now Microsoft and Oracle education, and we want to get rid of that. We want to have education on information and automation and not on product level, because that's what we are having now. And so education is getting our attention. We're starting to make plans with the sector. Healthcare, of course, they want to exchange data on a big scale. I don't know if it's the same here, but in Holland it is. So they need a lot of open standards and a little open laptop when standing at your bed and asking, who are you? Looking it up and, oh, I can see this is who you are and what you have. Well, monitoring, we did the first one. Second is in May. Always nice monitoring and ranking because it leads to commotion. That's what we want. And we have two ambassadors, well-known men, of course, so all men. And they help us. One is addressing the managers, the top managers of the government in their language. It's crucial. So it's no ICT word comes out of his mouth. He only speaks about, well, what is your problem? You have too much youth hanging around, damaging everything. Well, and then comes the story. And then the last two words are, ICT helps you. But that's it. And not something technical. Nobody wants it to hear. The other one is our go-between with the open community. I see it today again. It really is a community with their own culture. So we need a go-between. I think that's very important, and he does that. And he is addressing the education domain as well. Well, I told you, different levels of communication, different stories, and marketing by the OSS suppliers. They don't do too much about their marketing, but it's getting time. If you want to professionalize, if you want to take the government with you, start being someone who's looking up from his laptop and saying, you are going to use my things. Well, what do you want from me? Instead of, I have this, that, and that. You don't use this? Well, that is stupid, and then go on with your work. That time is over. You've got to knit your ponytail and dress up and go into the world. It's nothing about how you look, and it's a bit about how you look. It's a bit how you look around you. We need you. Well, that's what the whole question is about, open standardization. East meets the West. The road is the goal. I've heard it all day. And politicians, most of the time, go for a goal, which is not a road. So, that's the hard part. This is what we want to achieve. We're about here, and we want to get there. We need everyone. Yeah. This was what I wanted to tell you, I think, because I heard so much today, and we could go on for hours. But, well, I hope I can come next year, a colleague of mine, and I will tell you where we are. Very specific. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that's very interesting. Thank you very much, Ineke. Please stay a moment if you have. Are there any questions from the audience to the open source program development? May I just ask one first? Is it correct that you are the boss of about 10 or to 15 people who are all involved in open source, open standards, open governance? Or how many people are in your office?
Oh, we are with 15. And Fabrice Moos, like the Munich man just said, he's working with us.
Okay.
Maus is his name, Fabrice Maus. So we're 15, yeah.
That's because
conquering the world.
This is what struck me the most. In Switzerland, we have like maybe half a person who has the opportunity to be employed by official kind of public body, and the Netherlands seems to be quite far ahead. So that's very interesting. Question?
This is me again. Sorry. Just a practical question. You mentioned that you have prepared a practical manual for your administrations, how to use also, or how to download applications. I would be very, very interested.
You want to have it? Yeah, I can imagine. I'll take care to have it translated in English. We already have one booklet in English on the subject, and we're talking about starting a wiki now, and we want to make it in English too, because when I started last year, a Japanese delegation came by, and we had a good time, and they said, well, we have a wiki. I said, well, wonderful. Let me guess. Yeah, in Japanese, of course. So we mustn't do that again. So I wanted I know I'm part of a bigger thing. So where we can, and when we think it's interesting for others as well, we will go and try translate it in English, and we will put it on our site so you can download it right away. Yeah?
I would appreciate this as well, because when I looked at your website, I used Google Translate, and the problem was that I think your last name means push in Dutch.
Schop.
Shop something, and I almost addressed you as Mrs. Push.
Bush. Oh, God bless me.
So, no,
Yeah.
no, not Push. So please translate in English. This would be very interesting.
Schop. Oh, Schop is a German name.
Okay.
I mean, the Psalms book, my husband, that is, Johann Schop. Yeah.
Okay.
But this was a long time ago. Okay.
So thanks, and see you next year.
Yeah, I hope, I really like to come again. And success with your work.
Okay, thanks.